I am not a scientist or a theologian. It is not my intent to offend any religious sect or any individual's personal beliefs. I am presenting my own personal interpretation of the book of Genesis after completing extensive research of the text. This is not an attempt to prove or refute the validity or the religious aspect of the Bible. I will examine Genesis chapters 1 through 10 and present the evidence written in the text that both implicitly and explicitly state Adam was not the first human to exist. It is also not an attempt to prove or refute evolution or creation. There is very little science presented in this video because there is no need to. The pages of Genesis scream out human life existed before Adam. I am going to interpret and present 7 key pieces of evidence to prove humans existed before Adam, as it is clearly written in the text of Genesis. I will take a secular or non-religious approach when examining the text and not consider the Bible to be divine literature. The Bible is a book. If you do not believe in God, think of him as a character in the book. The first few slides provide you with information you may or may not already be aware of. This lays the groundwork for this presentation. I will then present the evidence humans existed before Adam, as it is clearly written in the pages of Genesis. Then, why you can still believe everything in Genesis is true, despite the evidence I will provide for you that Adam was not the first human to exist. And we'll wrap it up with some final thoughts and conclusions. The first 5 books of the Bible are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. According to references in the text of the Bible, the last 4 were written by Moses. Many scholars and theologians, as well as myself, believe Moses was the editor of Genesis. After Genesis chapter 10, the rest of these books reads like a historical narrative of the formation of the Hebrew or Israelite nation. I will only examine and interpret the first 10 chapters of the King James Bible as a Jewish history textbook, not divine literature. Keep an open mind. These are new ideas being presented. Science tells us the Earth is over 4 billion years old. Since the purpose of this video is to prove, according to the text of Genesis, that man existed before Adam, I will present no scientific evidence in this video. It is not needed. More importantly, why do creationists and many religious sects claim the Earth to be just a little over 6,000 years old? Actually, it's quite simple. The genealogy from Adam to Jesus. Although the entire timeline is amazingly accurate, I am only going to list a few names and significant dates. I took the liberty to round these to the hundreds. 4000 BC, Adam is created by God. 2500 BC, Noah's flood. 1000 BC, King David rules Israel. 430 BC, Malachi, the last book of the Old Testament, is written. 3 BC, the birth of Jesus. 2016 AD, the current year. Add 4000 plus 2016 equals 6,016 years. This does not prove the Earth is a little over 6,000 years old. It only proves the genealogy in the Bible adds up to a little over 6,000 years. Nowhere in the Bible does it tell us the age of the Earth. But if you choose, you can still believe everything in Genesis is true. You can also acknowledge the planet is billions of years old without committing heresy or refuting your core beliefs. How? Hang tight. The evidence is coming. A quick footnote. When referenced in Genesis, the earth is a finite piece of land in the Middle East. The authors had no concept of a planet revolving around the sun. So in this presentation, there is a distinction between the earth and the planet. This is a very busy slide, and please don't get too bogged down in the details. If you want to read Genesis or any other chapter in the Bible for that matter, be sure to use the King James Version, otherwise the text won't match up. This slide will be used to illustrate three things: chapters and verses, multiple authors, and the obvious inaccuracies in the 7-day creation story. The blue highlighted areas help demonstrate the insertion of chapters and verses. The Bible was not written as one continuous book. Chapters and verses were added sometime in the 15th century purely to make it easier to reference a certain passage or verse. Many theologians believe Genesis could have had up to 5 or 6 authors. Let's take a look at the significant difference between chapters 1 and 2. You will see in chapter 1, God is referred to as God, G-O-D. At the end of the 7-day creation story, which actually ends in chapter 2, he is then referenced as the Lord God. This is quite a significant difference and tells me to believe that the author of chapter 1 was not the same as chapter 2. Numbers have significant and symbolic meanings in the Bible. The number 7 appears over 700 times alone. It represents completeness, finality, and perfection. Moses compiled the writings and was the editor of Genesis. He then wrote the 7-day creation story to bridge the gap from the beginning of time to Adam. The earth was not created in 7 calendar days. 7 days was chosen to represent completeness and perfection. I'm going to go through a few obvious inaccuracies in chapter 1. The earth is created on day 3. Plants, trees, and vegetation are created on day 3. The sun and the moon are created on day 4. This is obviously not possible. Without a sun, there can be no trees, plants, or vegetation. There are many other inaccuracies. If you want to go in and check them out, be my guest. I only need to prove one. But why all the inaccuracies? The initial target audience. Until the New Testament was written after the life of Jesus, only Jews read the first 5 books of the Bible. It was and still is called the Torah. Hence, it was only intended for Jews, not Gentiles. Moses wrote the 7-day creation story with his limited knowledge of the earth at that time. The earth was a finite piece of land in the Middle East. It was flat and revolved around the sun. He had no knowledge of any other continents, etc., etc. It would be inconceivable to present his target audience with ideas such as the possibility of the Big Bang and an expanding universe, the possibility of evolution, the scientific evidence we have today. It just wouldn't be understood at that time. And finally, to the evidence. Let's take a look at the first of the two creation stories. The first occurs on day 6 in chapter 1. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Now this precedes the creation of Adam. That doesn't occur until chapter 2. Since the purpose of this video is to prove the Bible states humans existed before Adam, I'm not going to take the terms man and creation literally or loosely. You can believe whatever you wish. It has no impact on this video. The bottom line is, the text explicitly states man existed before Adam. I introduce this as Evidence Exhibit 1. Okay, so now we have the evidence stating man was created on day 6 in chapter 1. Let's take a look at the creation of Adam in chapter 2. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Okay, what is a soul? There are many interpretations and explanations provided by theologians and scholars, but I'm going to keep this very simple. A soul is a direct spiritual connection between man and God. The breath of life is also a significant piece of text that proves the video's purpose, that Adam was not the first human to exist. Let's take a look at the two creation stories in a little greater detail. As I stated earlier, the first was a way of bridging the gap from the beginning of time to Adam. This one verse in chapter 1, verse 27, can span hundreds of thousands of years. Again, I am not trying to refute or prove evolution or creation. It's not my intent. But the creation of Adam is significantly different. He was given the breath of life, and he was the first person with a soul. He is basically the first non-Gentile. His descendants would eventually be God's chosen people. Seeing there are two creation stories, and they are so uniquely different, I am entering this as Evidence Exhibit number 2. A quick synopsis from the creation of Adam to chapter 4. God takes one of Adam's ribs and creates Eve. They have two sons, Cain and Abel. So at this point, creationists believe there are 4 people on the planet: Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. Chapter 4, verse 8. And Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother, and slew him. Chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, the quick synopsis is, God is angry at Cain and banishes him from the earth. Chapter 4, verses 13 and 14. And Cain said unto the Lord, My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that every one that findeth me shall slay me. Well, who is he talking about? That every one who findeth me shall slay me. Obviously not Adam or Eve. I conclude Cain knew other humans / Gentiles existed on the planet. I enter this as evidence, exhibit number 3. Chapter 4, verses 16 through 17, more compelling. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived, and bare Enoch. And he builded a city, and he called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Well, if only Adam and Eve and Cain are alive, who did he marry? Some creationists say his sister. Not only is there no mention in Genesis of any other birth until Eve bears Seth, it is not possible or plausible. And she conceived and bare Enoch, and he builded a city. Well, who built the city? Conclusion: other Gentiles. I introduce this as evidence, exhibits 4 and 5. The final 2 pieces of evidence will be revealed in the story of Noah's Ark. Here is a quick pre-flood synopsis. Noah first appears in Genesis chapter 6. God is angry with the men of the earth for their wickedness, corruptness, and violence. God finds favor with Noah and instructs him to build a boat. God is going to destroy everything he created on the earth except Noah, his family, and all the animals on the earth. Please remember the distinction between earth and planet. I want to quickly revisit this slide before revealing the last 2 pieces of evidence. Chapter 1, verse 27 could span tens of thousands of years for man to either evolve or be created. Again, that's your choice. Chapter 2, verse 7, Adam is created and given the breath of life. The breath of life is a huge distinction, an important phrase moving forward. Chapter 6, verse 17. And, behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. From under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die. Now, God is not talking about the entire planet. He is talking about humans who had the breath of life. Basically, descendants of Adam and Eve, and any Gentiles they may have married. Chapter 7, verses 16 and 17, speaks about the animals Noah brings into the ark. I am totally speculating on this topic because there is no concrete evidence in the text. Animals are already created in the 7-day creation story and dispersed across the planet. There is a second creation story of animals in chapter 2, verse 19. God forms every beast of the earth and every fowl of the earth from the dust of the ground. Now Adam is also formed from the dust of the ground. Noah could have only taken animals from his finite region on earth. Because these animals were formed from the dust of the ground, I believe and deduce it's plausible these are the animals taken onto the ark. Chapter 7, verse 21 and 22. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land, died. Again, only humans and animals that had the breath of life were destroyed, not the entire planet. I am entering these three passages as evidence, exhibit number 6. So, after raining 40 days and nights, it takes 150 days for dry land to appear. Noah and every human and animal leave the ark when the earth is dry. So now creationists believe there are 8 living human beings on the planet. Chapter 9, verses 17 through 19. And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all the flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread. So these 3 sons and their wives are spread over the whole earth. Creationists believe you are descendants of these 6 individuals. Chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. And the sons of Javan, Elijah, and Tarshish, Kittiman, and Donami. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided into their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. So 2 generations after Noah, the term Gentile, meaning non-Jew, appears. Every one after this tongue, after their families, in their nation. Who are these Gentiles? Well, they are humans who survived a regional flood. Those who did not have the breath of life. I am entering this as evidence, exhibit number 7. Reviewing the evidence. Exhibit number 1. God creates man on the 6th day in chapter 1. Adam is not mentioned until chapter 2. Exhibit number 2. The 2 unique and distinct creation story. Adam receives the breath of life. If Adam was the first human to exist, who is Moses talking about in Exhibit 1? Exhibit number 3. Cain states he will be a vagabond and worries he will be killed. By who? Gentiles. Exhibit number 4. Who does Cain marry in Nod if there are only 3 people on the planet? Obviously, he had to marry a Gentile. Exhibit 5. Who builds the city Cain named after his son Enoch? Hate to be repetitive, but once again, other Gentiles. Exhibit number 6. After Noah's flood, only those killed had the breath of life, as it is clearly stated in Genesis. Exhibit number 7. Noah's descendants are spread out over the earth and dwell with Gentiles. Exhibits 1 and 7 explicitly state humans existed before Adam and Gentiles existed with Noah. Exhibits 2 through 6 implicitly state humans existed before Adam using the logical evidence I provided. I hope I have presented enough evidence to open up your minds and to be able to believe science, God, and the Bible can coexist. So the initial purpose of this presentation is complete. I am going one step further to solidify the existence of Adam. Remember, nowhere in the Bible does it tell us the age of the earth. With the exception of the 7-day creation story in chapter 1, everything from Genesis chapter 2 verse 4 going forward can be taken literally if you so choose. If you are Jewish, Muslim, atheist, or agnostic, The story can end here if you wish. I have proven my objective. I still encourage you to watch the next few slides. For those of us that are Christian, I will use the Gospel of Matthew to make 3 points. My 7 pieces of evidence dealt with Adam, Cain, Abel, and Noah. Jesus makes 3 direct references to Genesis. Number 1, Jesus quotes Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, basically verbatim. Jesus never mentions Adam in any of the 4 Gospels in the New Testament, but he references Genesis immediately after the creation of Eve. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 reads, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh." Now in the New Testament, in Matthew, beginning chapter 19, verse 3, the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, "Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause?" And he, meaning Jesus, answered and said unto them, "Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh." First, take a look at the green highlighted text in Matthew verse 4. Jesus says, "Have ye not read?" He is referring to reading Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. Now take a look at the 2 red highlighted statements. Jesus quotes Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, practically verbatim. Since Jesus references Genesis 2:24, which appears directly after the creation of Eve, I conclude Jesus believes Adam existed. Number 2, Jesus references Abel in Matthew chapter 23, verse 35. Prior to that verse, Jesus is lecturing the Pharisees and scribes of their arrogance, hypocrisy, and false pride. He then makes this statement, "That upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias, son of Barachias, who he slew between the temple and the altar." Since Jesus mentions Abel in Matthew 23:35, I conclude Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel have had to existed. Number 3, Jesus references Noah in Matthew chapter 24, verse 37. Prior to this verse, Jesus is talking to his disciples in analogies and parables about the end of days and his second coming. He then states, "But as the days of Noah were, so shall also be the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." Jesus is basically telling his disciples that no one knows when that time will be. And he references Noah as yet another analogy to state that. Early in this presentation, I provided you with the genealogy from Adam to Jesus. Noah appeared around 2500 BC, and just as a footnote, there is evidence of a regional flood around that time period. Jesus now mentions Noah in Matthew 24, verses 37 through 39. We have to conclude that he, along with Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel, existed. Why I made this presentation: to inform. Many of you have had this unrealistic dogma shoved down your throat since you were kids. You were told to believe unconditionally Adam was the first human to exist. If this video can change the minds of just one atheist or one agnostic to take a look at the Bible and the plausibility of God, I have done my job, and it is well worth it. I am aware this video will seem confrontational or even heretical to some. That was not my intent. It is my interpretation of Genesis as it is written. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you found it interesting, please share it with your friends. Its intent was to be informative and maybe change your views on God, the Bible, and science. They can all coexist. I know some of you will claim it to be heretical, but forget about the dogma that has been thrown down your throats for a lifetime. Use common sense. I interpreted Genesis exactly as it is written. I would love to hear your feedback. The following social media is available. Thanks for watching, and God bless.